Work session of December 6th, 2017 to order at 5:30. Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland?
Here.
James Burton?
Here.
Ken Jones is absent. Jeff Gard? I think he might join us later. Absent. Robert Beadle is absent. David Allison?
Here.
James Weiss?
Here.
That is not a quorum, but you can continue a work session. Do you have an agenda?
Not that one, but the purpose of the work session is to have a presentation on the Cordova Whiteshed Road and pedestrian improvements. And for our councilman online, if you could just get close to the mic, it picks it up really well. So appreciate you coming here to talk to us about this, and the floor is yours. Sir?
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Russ Johnson. I work for Department of Transportation. I'm a Highway Design Engineering Manager. And to my right here is my supervisor, Tim Wister. He's our Design Group Chief. And we're here to give you give an update, present the Cordova Whiteshed Road and Pedestrian Improvements Project. This past summer we did do some survey data collection. We did some geotech data and also some right-of-way mapping. So I'm here to give the 1,000 view of what we're discovering at this time. We have not ran any concepts or gotten into the detailed design part of this project, so we don't know what the concept will be. There is a handout here that shows 3 concepts, and as far as like what the cost estimates are for these concepts or how wide the sidewalk's going to be or how wide the shoulder is, we're not at that detailed stage right now. So I'm just here to present the project and answer what questions we have and give you the overview of what we're discovering. Tim, do you have anything?
That summarizes it. We're really just getting started in the project. We're gathering information to start developing concepts. We've been conducting research, collecting field data, so we can lay the groundwork for the project, trying to identify the problems that are going to have to be addressed, and try to get a sense of what we can fit into the constraints that are imposed by the geometry of the area and the and while keeping the project budget under control to the extent that we can. So I guess the purpose, we've learned enough at this point to recognize that this is going to be a more challenging project than typical because of the geometric constraints, tight right-of-way issues. We're pinched between the cliff and the inlet. As everyone here is aware, more than we are probably, or more than we were. It's going to be a project that's going to have enough technical challenges that we think that it's going to be appropriate to have a more of an interactive approach with the community than our typical remote project where there aren't too many people involved and it's pretty straightforward. We have some ideas about what we might be able to do, but we haven't developed it to the point to where we can get into too many details about exactly how wide it can be or what side we're going to be advancing to. But we're going to be having, by the nature of the project, we're going to be widening the road, so there's going to be widening the footprint, and there's going to be challenges associated with those things.
All right, let me jump in. Let me take over here before you steal all my thunder. So I gave a handout. There's a handout here. It's an agenda/informative handout. And I'm just going to kind of walk through some of these bullets here. The first one is the project scope. So the project scope is to provide pedestrian accommodations along Whiteshed Road between the Copper River Highway and the Orca Inlet Drive intersection. So that's for non-motorized users. That's people walking and bicyclists. A pedestrian accommodation could be widened paved shoulders. It could be a separated path. In this case, I don't want you to get your hopes up. It's not going to be a separated path. It could be a sidewalk. And so that's what we're talking when we say pedestrian accommodations. The purpose of the project is to improve safety by providing accommodations, once again, for non-motorized traffic within the project corridor. And I know a lot of you locals are more familiar with the pedestrian travel patterns and the seasonal people that come in and out of Cordova, but there's that RV campground by the ball fields, and there's a high pedestrian use that come in and out of town, and that's what we're trying to accommodate. And the project's needed, and as Tim has kind of mentioned before, the project's needed because Point Whiteshed Road is narrow. It's got 11-foot vehicle lanes, and it doesn't have shoulders in some areas. Some areas there is I guess a dirt shoulder on the outside of the pavement, and so that's where pedestrians work. So there's some non-motorized users in these pinch points have to walk in the traveled way where the vehicles are at. So that's why the project is needed. We want to get them people out of the road. Kind of a background, a project start. So I know this project has a longer history than 2017, but 2017 is when I officially got the project start, the federal paperwork that says, okay, this project's approved, proceed with the design. The sponsors for the project were the city of Cordova and the native village of Eak. This is a federally funded project, which means that 91% of the funds, so if I say I have $1, 91 cents of every dollar is provided by the federal funds. And then there's a local match. The local match is 9%. And in this case, 4.5% of that match is going to be a state match. That's state funds. So 4.5 cents in every dollar, state money. And then that other 4.5% match is being split between the city of Cordova and the village of Eak, which equals 2.25% each. So for every dollar spent, city of Cordova has to pony up 2.25 cents, and same for the village of Eak. Tim, am I missing anything? Doing good?
No,
All right.
nothing to add.
So I'm gonna jump down to bullet 5. Like I said, this summer we went out, our surveyors went out and they did a topographic survey. We did some geotechnical drilling too. And there's a lot, as everybody knows, not a lot, there is a couple pinch points in that area where you got a cliff on the mountainside and you got a cliff on the ocean side there. And then there's going to be the constraints where things are going to get expensive, because if we're going to widen towards the ocean, then we need to widen the footprint of the road, and which means we have to push the road or this new facility shoulders or sidewalk out towards the lake. So then when we get into that realm, there's couple alternatives or concepts. One is you could do a cantilevered bike path where the bike path's hanging out over the cliff and it's anchored into the rocks. Another one is to do a retaining wall. We got a retaining wall that's supporting the bike path. Like you'd think, everybody knows what a retaining wall is. And then features there are going to be, they're expensive because you have to get them. First, they have to be crash worthy. So if a vehicle goes off the road, errant vehicle runs off the road, that it can withstand being smacked around by a truck or a car. So they have to be pretty stout. They have to be anchored into the rock, and also provide the accommodations, enough room for the pedestrians in there. So the design concepts that were handed out here, there's three concepts, and let me stress the word concepts, because that's important. We're not here to get into the details on how wide this thing's going to be. These are some concepts of thoughts of things that could work. And the top one here is just a typical road with widened shoulders. And the shoulders can anywhere from 4 to 6 feet shoulders. And that would be for pedestrians and bicyclists to accommodate them. They can ride on the side of their shoulders. But then notice there is still a retaining wall on that, because where we get into these pinch points, we're going to have to somehow support that soil as it goes down the hill. Middle one is two lanes. You could have shoulders on each side, 0 to 4.5 foot shoulders. You got a curb and gutter, and then you have the sidewalk, which everybody's used to seeing. And that gives, the benefit of that is it gives people more of a defined path on where they're supposed to be and where they're supposed to walk. It makes them feel a little safer. They're not walking on the side of the road. And so this one here, the one in the middle, sidewalk 1, has the sidewalk on the right-hand side of the road, which is the ocean side. And then the one at the bottom is just a mirror image of that, and it just has the sidewalk. That would be the mountainside, opposite side of the road. So the sidewalk would be on the left-hand side of the road. Go ahead. Questions? No? Okay, so looking at these dimensions on here, there's a bunch of dimensions, and a lot of them say it could vary, you know, like these lane westbound, eastbound lanes, it can be 10-foot wide, they could be 11-foot wide lanes. Like I said, now the existing road has 11-foot lanes. The shoulders could vary anywhere from 0 to 4 to 6 feet wide. Sidewalk, the sidewalk could vary. If you're looking at ADA compliance, 5-foot wide is the minimum width for a sidewalk, and that gives you enough room where 2 wheelchairs could pass at the same time. Tim, anything to add, or what am I missing?
One of the things to keep in mind with these concepts is that as you work from top to bottom on this sheet, the 3 concepts that are shown, as you go from top to bottom, each one will become a little bit wider. It's going to add more features, and it is going to rapidly become more expensive. It will add additional impacts for, it may add additional impacts for environmental issues. Any of these could get into a need for some right-of-way acquisition in order to fit the footprint into the road. As you get wider, those impacts are going to increase. These are some of the decisions that we're going to have to make as we proceed. So these are some of the factors that will influence which one of these is ultimately selected as the optimum balance between the facility we're trying to provide versus the impacts and the cost.
And kind of another additional topic besides these pedestrian accommodations is something that we've been looking at is the hydrology, the culverts out there. Some of the culverts are past their economic life. Some of them are undersized and need to be replaced. So that's also another part of the design, even though you don't think of it as a pedestrian accommodation, but when we widen the road, we're gonna have to widen or extend these culverts to drain. And a lot of them are past their lifespan and need to be replaced and also upsized. And there is some areas which I'm sure everybody here is aware of, that there's drainage issues in the ditches and occasionally the water overtops the road sheet flow. So we'll be looking at also addressing them problems there. And when you start talking about culverts and cleaning ditches or making ditches deeper, then you also get into that possibility of running into utility conflicts. So there are some other design issues that we'll be working around and with.
Another additional detail relating to utility conflicts, when we talk about utility conflicts, well, it means that a facility we're trying to construct is going to be in conflict with a utility that's there. If that then needs to be relocated in order to get it out of the way of a new culvert, well, then we will be starting to incur costs that will need to be borne by the utility company, at least as we understand it at this point, for the design and cost of moving those to a certain extent.
All right, so I'm going to jump down to the next bullet. It's right away. I'll do my best. I am not a surveyor, but I do know a little bit about the history of this. So the right-of-way along Point Whiteshed Road was granted in 1935 by the railroad company. And in 1935, since 1935, the road has kind of wiggled and waggled around a little bit. It's moved over time. And in the 1960s, they started developing subdivisions along Whiteshed Road. And if you looked at the legal description of what the right-of-way was, the right-of-way said, hey, the road right-of-way is 30 feet from the existing center line, 30 feet each side of the existing center line. So these surveyors in the 60s mistakenly said, well, there's the road, there's the center of the road. And they pulled their tape measure and they went and measured 30 feet on each side of the road and pounded some corners and said, well, here's my new subdivision through here. But that wasn't right because the road has moved since 1935. So there's some conflicts that we're going to be looking at addressing as part of this project, trying to clean up this right-of-way conflicts as they exist. Tim, did I?
No, that's the problem that we need to address. You know, just going into the project before we even start to define whether additional right-of-way is going to be needed for the new features we're going to be constructing. There are some, we don't have a full understanding of all the details at this time. We don't have a full understanding of what we're going to need to address those details. But we do know there are some problems with relation to where the road is located with respect to the right-of-way and where the adjacent property lines are with respect to the right-of-way. We will need to be back again with more information as we develop those details, because there's going to need to be some interaction in order to fully address that. And these are things that will need to be, these are things that we will need to be addressed in order to use the federal funds that are going to be, that are intended to be used for this project. It's one of the requirements that comes associated with the use of the federal highway funds.
Okay, I'm gonna jump down. Well, keep going down. Project budget. I'm just going to note that the budget for the project is we're trying to hit the $8 million tag, which does seem expensive, but we have some expensive spots to get through. That's our budget that we're going to hold to. And I'm going to jump down to the design schedule and talk about how we're going to approach this design. Like I said, the summer of 2017, we went out and did some geotech investigation and some survey, picked up some survey topo, and we mapped the right-of-way. And this winter / spring of this year, what we're going to do is hire a construction manager, general contractor, to help us with this design. And what we're basically going to do is we're going to hire a construction contractor, the guy that's going to build the project. We're going to hire him during the development of the design so he can give us input on the technical, the risks associated with the project and how to build the project and what's the footprint, how much room does he need to work on the project. Because when we start talking about cantilever retaining walls, it's a pretty specialized construction technique and a specialized equipment and also a cost. So when we're developing the environmental document, we're going to have a contractor in our pocket and we're going to say, how would you build this, or how can we build this? What would be your method to build this, and how much is it going to cost? So we'll get pretty good costs as we develop these concepts, and also have the contractor in our pocket to help us address risks. Now, this is a more expensive design process up front, but then the theory is the payback is what you save during construction, because you shouldn't have change orders when the thing comes out, because the contractor has worked with you as developed the design and come up with the construction project and process of this. So that's really kind of a unique, it's not our standard way to do this, but because we do have kind of some unique situations here, we think it'll be a real benefit to the project and pay dividends towards the end. So summer 2018, winter 2019, we'll develop alternatives, get an environmental document. And when we do that environmental document, we'll be back and we'll do a presentation to the City Council and the public, and we'll present some alternatives and some price tags associated with these alternatives, and we'll get everybody's input on that before the environmental document's approved. And when that environmental document's approved, at that point, we'll have a chosen alternative to carry forward into design. So that's the time when we'll know, well, how wide is the sidewalk going to be? Are we going to have shoulders or no shoulders? Where's the retaining walls going to be located at? And what's the price tag? So yeah, after the environmental document, 2019, we'll get into detailed design, and then 2020, we should be turning dirt and building something. Tim?
I think that covers it to the extent that, this is a broad, high altitude outline of what we've done so far, and what we see the general schedule moving forward. I'd like to emphasize a bit that, due to the nature of this project, well, we will be back again for additional meetings, with the council and with the public as we develop more detailed information. At a minimum, we'll be back once more before we complete the environmental document. In a project like this, in some cases, depending on what details we encounter, there may be a need for more than one additional public meeting, and we will make those adjustments as we learn more. So
Questions?
So based on this information, are there any questions that anyone has that we can help with?
Councilman Weiss.
Yeah, I have a question. You spoke of different contractors. How have things changed? You would seek to how they would do this, and I also appreciate how you reference how you would do federal highway. We need to make this work with federal highway funds. It sounds like to collect federal highway funds for this. Is this the best way for that? I'm like when I see this project for pedestrians, to get pedestrians off the road, I see piling in the intertidal zones and 2 abutments just to go around the whole thing, which seems, when you look at a $10 million price tag, close to, it's not quite, but that seems like a lot less to me, and I don't want to undermine all the work that you guys have done or anything like that. I just done a lot of work with the file drivers before, but is getting people off the road what gets federal highway funds, or is improving that highway and making it accessible for pedestrians?
I guess I'm not too sure I understand the project. The project was established intending to use federal highway funds.
Okay.
And this work, because this work will be constructing improvements associated with a public highway, it is eligible for those funds, for a certain category of those funds. I mean, depending on how much detail you wanted to get into, there's one of the categories of federal highway funds is for community transportation plans, and that would be the category of funds that this sort of project would be eligible for, and it's because of the nature of the road and the nature of the project. So really the state doesn't have state dollars available to build this in its entirety, solely with state money. So really our only avenue would be to use the federal highway funds, as far as we understand it. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure I understood.
It does, but yeah, it does.
Okay.
If there's any questions from the public, just come up to the microphone and just state your name and address for the record, and that'll allow Councilman Burton to listen along. Any questions for, yeah, Alan?
Help me if I'm misstating what I thought you were saying. It popped into my mind as James was asking this question. What component of this project qualifies it for the federal highway funding? Is it the pedestrian component of it?
It would be its association with the public road.
Okay.
This will be a benefit to White Shed Road.
Okay.
Again, it's kind of hard to know how much detail to get into or how much detail you're interested in, but nationwide, this sort of project would not be eligible for federal highway funds. Within the highway bill, there is a special exception for Alaska that makes most of those roads that are within a public right-of-way, not private roads, but most public roads are eligible for participation by Federal Highway Administration in the state of Alaska. There may be another state or two with that provision. I'm not sure about that, but I know that it's rare. But because we are constructing improvements within a public right-of-way, it's a community road, and it will be, benefiting the road by nature of moving pedestrian traffic, out of the traveled way. Those are the things that do make it eligible for participation by the Federal Highway Administration, at least in this state.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you have a question, we just ask that you come to the microphone so our councilman online can follow. Thank you. Yeah, that one right there. You kind of have to get close to it too.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming to present this background on the project. Just one comment and then a question. My name is Dustin Solberg, resident here in Cordova. First, I was interested to hear about the special exception in the federal highway bill for Alaska public road projects. It makes me wonder if Uncle Ted wasn't looking out for us.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the history of how this came to be this way, but that's,
here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My only question really is about the process of hiring the construction manager or a general contractor, and I was wondering if you could go through the process and the timeline of that particular piece, whether there's an RFP or how that process works.
You want to get into that? Or?
Yeah, I'll get into that. I'm almost tempted to have Dwayne talk. Dwayne, why don't you come on up here and explain the CMGC process? Yeah, you can come on up here so we all can see you. Don't be shy.
Hi, my name is Dwayne Davis. I'm the design engineer for this project. And so when we get prepared to hire a CMGC contractor, we will put out an RFP, request for proposals, and we will just like we would hire a design consultant to design the project, we would hire a consultant to provide design services to help us as we're doing the design, to we can ask questions and help facilitate the design. That selection process follows our normal procurement process for professional services. Generally, it does not require professional licensing, since we're doing the design in-house by licensed engineers. And it basically relies on the contractor to provide their expertise in construction to the designers. Now, the contractors will, as part of the request for proposals, will submit proposals based on their understanding of the project, and then those proposals will be reviewed and scored by a committee, evaluation committee, and a contractor will be selected, and then we'll enter into negotiations with them for their fee, their services during design. So we'll give them, we'll issue a professional services agreement for that. Now, this hiring a CMGC contractor is a little bit different. It's what's known as an innovative procurement method because in our state statutes and administrative code, we don't have a mechanism for providing a professional services agreement followed immediately by a construction contract. We've already got approval through the administrative and statutory approvals to do this. We've done this on a number of other projects. And what happens is, at the end of the design process, we prepare cost proposals with the contractor. He's going to tell us how much it's going to cost him to construct the project. And we look at that, and we hire In the process, we hire an independent cost estimator who also prepares a cost estimate, and we compare the contractor's cost estimate with the independent cost estimator and our own estimate, and we determine whether that's going to provide a fair price for the project. If it does, then we issue a construction contract. If it does not, and we can't come to an agreement on that, then we, the state, reserve the right to end the contract and then proceed to, with the project and solicit bids from other contractors, just as we would on any normal project. And that's it in a nutshell.
Yep. What's the CMCG acronym stand for?
Say again?
The CMCG acronym, what's that?
CMGC stands for Construction Manager General Contract.
It's bullet 8B on the back page. Yeah. So part of the RFP process, just to kind of add a little bit more, when the contractor is developing their request for proposal or their proposal, they also add in their, like, what their qualifications are, what are their innovations, what makes them the best for this project. And there's a selection criteria, a scoring, and there's a committee that scores these proposals. First, when they get the proposals, everybody scores their own proposal independently from each other, and then they get together as a committee, and then they go over their scores and justifications for why they scored the proposals. Each criteria, the way they did. One of them is like one of its innovations is one of the criteria. What innovations do you have? What's your project history with similar projects? Do you have any that are similar to this?
So one of the differences by hiring a contractor to provide a professional service agreement to them, and what makes us different from a normal, what we call a design bid build project, is that we're selecting a contractor based on their ability and not based on their price. So in a design bid build, when we put a project out for bid, generally it's the low bidder that gets the project, that gets to construct the project. In this case, we want to hire a contractor that has the best qualifications for this type of work. And then we make sure through our process that the price is fair. It's a fair value for the public's trust.
So all along as the design's progressing, we have this contractor in our pocket, and that when we get to these key milestones, we'll say, okay, contractor, you develop your cost estimate, and Dwayne will do his cost estimate, and like you said, we have another independent cost estimator, and then we'll get together and compare our costs, and we'll see if one, like the contractor's way high and we're way low, we'll say, well, why does it cost you so much to drill and blast rock, and it's cheap for me? And then we can get into what their methodology is and what their equipment rate is, what their labor rate is, what's their production rate, and we can get into them details and really eliminate a lot of that risk. Or if we did do, like Dwayne said, a normal one, we do the design and then we put it out and the low bidder gets it. And we're just using historical costs at DOT based on similar projects, but here we actually have the contractor in our pocket to tell us what his costs are going to be. And then we either agree or disagree, and we negotiate. And like you said, at the end, we come up, the goal is to come up with a fair price for everybody, and then give the contractor the green light and say, okay, go build it. And then he knows all the history and the constraints of the design. One of the constraints is going to be that's the only road in and out of that area, so we can't really be shutting the road down. Still, we got to, if we're going to be replacing culverts or retaining walls, how are we going to do that? How are we going to handle traffic during construction? So that would be one key component, that the contractor that's going to do it can tell us this is how we're going to do it and keep traffic moving.
Other questions? Got a couple. So when you mentioned the relocation of the utilities, and you said it would probably be the utility cost, is that to make the project feasible, or is that because you don't have permitted
Yeah, it's our,
relocation rights for the utility?
there's no permitted utilities along White Shed Road. Is there?
Yeah,
We're not aware.
These are all permitted.
Okay, if there is, yeah, if they're permitted facility, DOT permitted, then they are eligible for relocation costs, but if they are not permitted, sorry. They're not.
No, that's a piece of information that's of interest to us. When we were developing the project, our utilities section researched the files and they didn't find any permits on file. So if there are permits, then we'll need to coordinate with the utility companies and get confirmation of that. But yes, that's correct. The permit is the issue that will determine that question. Determine the answer to that question.
And then at least the telephone and electric are permitted. So I think you kind of answered this as well, but there's curb and gutter here, so is there going to have to be catch basins and storm drains? And would you just kind of, those would probably end up going to the culvert locations anyway?
Yep. Typically, you tie your culvert locations in with your curb and gutter, and then once you do curb and gutter, then that gutter is going to be catching the water. So every so often we got to have a catch basin and get it underneath the sidewalk and get it to drain.
How far along in the like in this process, if that's the right question, but are federal funds committed to this yet?
They're projected for the year 2020 construction funds.
The current STIP is under development at the moment.
Okay.
So there is not a definitive formal answer to that at this time.
Okay.
The draft, I believe, does include funds for this project, but it's still in development. It still needs to go through the process of public notice, coordination between the regions, and then for approval by Federal Highway.
The draft STIP is in 2020.
The draft STIP, yeah.
Is for construction right now.
Yes, I just kind of want to follow through with a few questions because we have until 6:45, and so we might as well use the time. I'm interested. I work for Cordova Electric. Actually, we had the entire road surveyed, so we've got good plan sets for that. When the electricals and stuff that we can share. But yeah, so the STIP, and this is just a general question. Help me understand how the STIP. Yeah. So the STIP, just to help me understand how that process works. So you have all these kind of draft projects, and then as they move along, if you actually can come up with a feasible design and everything, then that's one that you might carry forward. Whereas if it just hits a whole bunch of sticking points between now and 2020, that might get moved farther down the STIP list or something. Or, I mean, is that the STIP list? Is that something the state presents to the federal government? Like, here's our 3-year plan, and then you try to.
The STIP is developed by the state planning section.
Okay.
It's approved by Federal Highway Administration.
Okay.
But it is developed by the state, and it goes through a formal public review and comment process. I believe it goes through more than one typically. And again, depending on how much detail, we have someone here from planning that may be able to answer in more detail, depending on how much detail you want to get into on that. But the high altitude perspective is that the planning section of the department will develop a list of desired projects. They solicit input from communities, from trucking industry, from various user groups. They develop a list of projects statewide. They start prioritizing them. They coordinate between the regions, and then over a period of weeks and months, we'll put together a prioritized list that's based on wants. Then apply funding constraints to it based on what our federal annual allocation would be, and
Projected schedules too.
and
Yeah,
right.
We think
right.
we can get things done. They try to coordinate all that.
Right, each project is broken down into different funding stages for design, for right-of-way acquisition, for utility relocation, and then finally for construction. Each of those is presented separately in the STIP for each project. I don't know the details of the public involvement process in the development of this. I do know that it goes out for a formal public review, public notice after the draft has been developed before it goes to Federal Highway. I believe that it has already been out for public review even before we get to that, but depending on how much detail you want to get into on that, beyond that, I need to call.
All right, at this point, I don't think it's an overstatement to say that this is a very high priority for the community. I mean, in terms of like a bike path out to 10 Mile, for instance, along the Copper River Highway is a want. This is more of a need. There's a lot of foot traffic only, especially summer rentals in the Odiak Camper Park, and just a lot of school traffic, pedestrian and bike traffic. And because of those pinch points, despite the speed limits, there's a real safety concern there. So this is a really high priority for the community. So I think you'll find that another way of saying that is you'll get a lot of support from the utilities and whatnot to help try to knock the corners off the costs. So where we can. And so other questions or comments about the need for this project or what it could accomplish in terms of the parks and stuff, Alan?
How long will it take to complete?
Are you asking about how long construction will take or how long the whole process will take?
Well, the construction starts in the summer of 2020 projected. How long will it take to complete that phase of it?
Let's say one summer season.
One summer?
Again, there's some variability in that depending on what alternative is ultimately chosen, but our expectation is that it will be a one-season job, at least at this time.
So you're saying in 5 days? One summer?
One Fairbanks summer season.
June 30th through July 4th. Do you have any questions for us or?
I don't think we will need to have some coordination with the city staff as we develop this. We were visiting with them earlier today. At least at this time, I don't think we have anything we need to ask of the council. We do expect that we will need to, have at least one and possibly more visits with the community and possibly the council as we develop into the different stages of the project.
Okay. And so other questions, council? Public? Okay. I guess that concludes our work session. How many of you are here to testify on the budget or the public hearing at 6:45? Okay, because I could grant some additional time there. I think I will. I think we'll start that at 6:30. Oh well, we have councilman calling in though. I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and keep our schedule. We'll start at 6:45, but if there are comments that people feel they can't accommodate in the 3 minutes for agenda items in the regular meeting, and we need more time for the work session, we can extend that a little bit, if that makes sense. The public hearing, yes.
So you're adjourning this?
Yeah, so adjourn the work session and recess till 6:45. Yeah.